Okay, linear. Again, something I've mentioned earlier. Linear on the surface seems like a relatively safe model to work with. Linear recognises that every step of the customer's journey is important, and linear is like taking baby steps towards multi-touch attribution in the way that equal credit is given to each channel on the way to conversion. Google says that this model is useful if your campaigns are designed to maintain contact and awareness with the customer throughout the sales cycle. In a perfect world, perhaps. But in truth, with linear attribution, there's no real winner, and that means your marketing channels are all born perfectly equal. Just that statement alone should highlight the problem with this model. It's okay, sure, but only compared to the limited first and last click models. So what's good and bad? It's a bit better than the default setup. It's arguably a safe first step into the world of multi-touch attribution. You can start to optimize for the customer journey using it, and every channel is a hero to your business. Against it is it's still inaccurate and can be misleading. It's not that much better than the default option. Equal credit assumes that all marketing is born equal, which is dangerous because you probably don't spend identical time and money on each marketing channel. It's incredibly difficult to base your marketing budgets on linear attribution, so it impacts your scalability and your true ROI. And I've said that it's a hero to every channel as a pro, but that's also a negative too. So position-based models are interesting. They're a hybrid of the last and first touch models. Instead of giving all the credit to either the first or last touch, however, they split the credit between all touches. So one common scenario is that 40% of the credit is given to the first and the last interaction, totaling 80%, and then 20% credit is given to all the interactions in the middle, essentially, between the first and the last. But if you have a lot of steps before conversion occurs, that means that anything in between the first and last gets divvied up a very thin slice of the reward. Do we like it then? Pros: this model ensures that every touch point in the customer journey receives a portion of the credit, while still allowing you to optimize for the first and last touches. So it's another step in a positive direction beyond linear. It values the touch that introduced someone to you and finally made them commit. It's a bit like putting half your effort into the first date and your wedding day, with everything in between getting a little bit of attention. It could kind of work, I guess. Just don't tell your better half that. It recognises the approximate shape of the customer journey too. So, against it, if you don't know what you're doing or tracking, then it can be a bit of a dangerous model to use. It requires a little more thought because you have to be sure your first touch really is that potent. And does it make sense for your first email to have more value than your social media campaigns, or equal value to your paid ad that drove that final click and sale? That's a rhetorical question, but it probably doesn't. It also doesn't consider timescale, meaning, as an example, the second to last touch could occur on the same day as the conversion, but it doesn't get anywhere near the credit of the last touch, and this doesn't really make sense. It's the very last negative that concerns me about this model, and it's probably the strongest objection for using it, or should I say against using it. So I've left my favourite standard out-of-the-box model until last, and that's time decay. Time decay is a more sophisticated, sort of common sense approach to attribution. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to the other options, time decay makes sense. It's pretty solid. So the time decay model has a default half-life in analytics of 7 days, meaning that a touch point occurring 7 days prior to a conversion will receive half the credit of a touch point that occurs on the day of the conversion. Similarly, a touch point occurring 14 days prior will receive quarter the credit of the day of the conversion. This exponential decay continues within your chosen look-back window, the default being 30 days. If that all sounds a bit complicated, essentially it works on the concept of exponential decay, with the most heavily credited touchpoints being nearest to the time of conversion. Hence, it feels like a pretty common sense approach, but of course there are pros and cons to time decay too. So the pros being, it's a big step forward in the multi-touch attribution analysis. It's good, it's not perfect, but we can truly optimize our campaigns and marketing as we generate momentum with them over time. It certainly respects the customer journey through the multi-touch and time window. It gives you confidence in how multi-touch channels are working in union. And with the exception of the very first touch, it makes reasonable sense the further back in time you go, the less credit a touch point should have. There are not so many cons. The single biggest is that while providing excellent attribution for conversion optimization, this model lacks the ability to recognize that original interaction, that original touch that introduced the customer to your brand. And time decay penalizes the early research phase that people typically go through before they purchase online or before they make a decision. Just because I like it doesn't mean you should use it. Hence, in the next chapter, we cover how to choose your model with a nice diagram to make your life easier. And we go through the custom model, or at least we discuss it so you can decide whether or not you go for one of the out-the-box models or you build a custom model for your business. Catch you on the other side.